Welcome to Extraterrestrial Reality. UFO whistleblower David Grusch is back in the news. He's filed a $2.5 million lawsuit against Loudoun County, Virginia, for releasing information with regard to some incidents that involved him that he says should never have been released. And he says that the release of that information caused him to suffer personally and professionally. I talked about this last August of 2023 when there was a hit piece. This all started with a hit piece by a former Intercept reporter named Ken Klippenstein. Ken Klippenstein no longer works at the Intercept. He quit there back in April of this year. But last year when he was with the Intercept, he was sicced onto Grusch after Grusch had testified before Congress. Grusch, a former Air Force major, a retired Air Force major, he testified before Congress about crash retrieval and reverse engineering programs of alleged extraterrestrial spacecraft. And shortly after that happened, there was a hit piece that Ken Klippenstein wrote with regard to this, and the way the information, with the way Klippenstein got that information. I said, a lot of people at the time said that it seemed like it was against the law, or should have been against the law, and might have even violated some HIPAA regulations. That was my feeling on it. And I'm going to play a little piece later on of what I was saying last year during a podcast with regard to this. But what happened basically was after Grusch had testified to Congress about crash retrieval and reverse engineering programs of UFOs, this hit piece appeared in the Intercept, and what we learned from Ken Klippenstein, the former Intercept reporter, was that he had been approached by multiple people within the intelligence community and the Department of Defense who sicced him, Klippenstein, onto Grusch. Grusch had some issues in Loudoun County, Virginia, where he lived in the past. He had some PTSD issues, and this information really wasn't public. There were documents in Loudoun County for that when police responded to calls because he was having some issues at different points, and Grusch believed that information should have been released. The only reason that Klippenstein knew it because people in the Defense Department and the intelligence community told him about these documents. And the documents, even though they didn't have they didn't have Grusch's name in the documents, it did have his address. So that's how Klippenstein. That's how he's able to connect the address with Grusch and make this hit piece article that he wrote about him. But anyway, here's an article, and this is from the Loudoun Times. It says here, a retired Air Force officer who testified before Congress that the United States government was involved for decades in a secret crash retrieval and reverse engineering program involving UFOs is suing Loudoun County Sheriff Mike Chapman and an unidentified sheriff's office employee for releasing personal information about him. The plaintiff, retired Major David Grusch, says in a $2.5 million lawsuit filed July 16th in Loudoun Circuit Court that a sheriff's office employee improperly released highly sensitive personal information about his medical history in response to a Freedom of Information Act request on July 30th, 2023. The employee is identified only as Jane Doe. In an email to the Times Mirror, Sheriff's Office spokesman Thomas A. Julia said the agency acted in accordance with the law in responding to the referenced FOIA and disagrees with the allegations filed. Ken Klippenstein, then a reporter for The Intercept, filed the records request 4 days after Grusch testified before the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. Grusch told the committee that several current and former members of the intelligence community and military provided him with photography, official documentation, and classified oral testimony about the program, according to a transcript of his remarks. Grusch said that he filed a whistleblower complaint with the United States Office of the Intelligence Community Inspector General and suffered retaliation for his actions. A sheriff's office employee provided Klippenstein with an incident report detailing why a magistrate in October 2018 issued an emergency custody order to detain Grusch involuntarily at Innova's Loudoun Adult Medical Psychiatric Services Program for a psychiatric evaluation, according to the suit. and an ECO, an emergency custody order, allows people deemed by a magistrate to be a danger to themselves or others to be held for up to 8 hours for an evaluation. So basically, I just want to stop there for a second. The reason that the intelligence community and the Department of Defense did this, the reason that they sicked this muckraker Klippenstein onto Grusch, was because they didn't like the fact that Grusch was testifying before Congress about the crash retrieval and reverse engineering program. So they wanted to try to make him look like a nut because he had these PTSD issues in the past in Loudoun County when officers were Grusch's wife had contacted police and had showed up at his house and detained him for a bit. So they're just trying to basically run his name through the run him through the mud, run him through the muck. And of course, this is what Klippenstein does for a living. That's all he. That's his. What's he? Muckrakers. That's all they do. He doesn't. This guy has no care about UFOs or anything like that. He's just looking for a story all the time. That's all he is. He was sicked onto Grusch by these people in the from the Pentagon and the intelligence community because they wanted to make him look like he's crazy because they don't like the fact that there are whistleblowers like David Grusch trying to tell the world the truth about the crash retrieval and reverse engineering program. That's what it's all about. Anyway, continuing with the article, it says, a mental health worker who evaluated Grusch sought a temporary detention order for him, but Grusch, quote, was not committed and was consequently released, end quote, according to the suit. A TDO allows a person deemed a danger to themselves or others to be held up to 72 hours before a civil commitment hearing. Reports and court documents related to an involuntary admission are excluded from being released under the Virginia FOIA, according to the suit. And the suit states, the defendants had no authority to exercise discretion when releasing information relating to plaintiff's involuntary admission records, reports, and/or documents. The disclosure to Klippenstein was prohibited by law. The Intercept, an online investigative news site, published an article on August 9, 2023, that included a redacted version of the incident report. It said Grusch's wife called the sheriff's office to report that he was drunk and experiencing a mental health crisis in their home. The couple sold the home in 2019, according to county property records. The article said the security clearances which Grusch had are subject to strict requirements and questioned why Grusch was allowed to keep his security clearance after the 2018 incident. The lawsuit says the article caused Grusch to suffer personally and professionally. Of course it did. Of course it did. That was what it was designed to do, and that's what Ken Klippenstein. That's who he is. He's a muckraker, and he was just a useful idiot for the intelligence community and the Department of Defense, and who wanted to make Grusch look like you can't trust him because he had this incident years before. Of course, what a nice way to treat someone in the military who served this country and then has an issue with PTSD and then you try to drag his name through the mud. What a great thing to do, isn't it? Obviously, I'm being facetious. Yeah, this is what they do to people. If you want to speak out against if you want to try to tell the truth about this, of course, Grusch learned things. He spoke to different people when he was investigating UFOs, and he was talking to different government officials. He saw documentation, and he was absolutely certain that there most certainly is a crash retrieval and reverse engineering program, and that's what he told Congress. He testified under oath. And of course, the control group doesn't like that. So what do? They find they sick Ken Klippenstein onto David Grusch, and now here we are. Now he's filing a $2.5 million lawsuit against Loudoun County. Now I didn't see that coming. I thought he might be doing something else, and maybe he still will be. I think it might have been a violation of HIPAA regulations when the fact that you had multiple people who were with the intelligence community and Department of Defense who were telling Klippenstein where to look. I mean, how Klippenstein never would have known that this was David Grusch because how would he know? He wouldn't have known. That's like divulging personal information about someone. But they told him where where to look. He'll find documentation in Loudoun County about this, and he did. And Loudoun County gave this documentation to Klippenstein, and now Loudoun County is getting sued for $2.5 million. Maybe Loudoun County should, if they end up having to pay this, maybe they should be suing the Ken Klippenstein and the Intercept, and maybe even the intelligence community and the Department of Defense for causing all this havoc in the first place. Who are these people that were giving out David Grusch's personal information in an effort to make him look like a fool? Maybe those people should be getting sued too. But now you see what's going on after that happened. That was 11 months ago when this all started, and now here we go. Now there's a lawsuit filed, and could you blame David Grusch? I don't know about that. But anyway, I just want to play. This is last August. I had talked about this on the show on a podcast. It was an episode that a reporter admits government sicked him onto Grusch. And I'm going to play a clip from that podcast from last year. Check it out. And all Klippenstein was just a tool, basically like Mongo and Blazing Saddles. Mongo only pawn in Game of Life. That's all Klippenstein is. That guy's just out for, he doesn't care who he hurts. He wrote a terrible article. There was no balance in it whatsoever. He had terrible excuses of why that was the case. Didn't make any sense. But that's beside the point. Klippenstein was just a tool used by the government. And also, Klippenstein does have connections to people within the government, including his father, who apparently did some work with the Department of Energy. And the Department of Energy, as has been reported in the past by different UFO researchers, that's a group that has been said to be involved in the long-standing cover-up. But anyway, here was some information from Reddit. Somebody put up a discussion piece. It says, here's the connection between the Department of Energy and the Intercept's hit piece against Grusch. The journalist who wrote the piece against Grusch in the Intercept is the son of a chemist and researcher who works for the Argonne National Laboratory, which is part of the United States Department of Energy. His father's interests include developing theoretical methods for predicting the kinetics and dynamics of gas phase reactions and applying them to interesting problems in combustion, interstellar, and atmospheric chemistry. And it goes on to say, it says, this is surely a conflict of interest, since the Department of Energy is one of the organizations most frequently claimed to be involved in the cover-ups. And Chris Mellon mentioned that the Department of Energy has black programs running without no oversight. Ken has also tweeted about his dad before, which confirms the connection. Is it possible that that it was Klippenstein's father who did work for the Department of Energy? Is this the person, one of the people maybe that had contacted him? In the article, he just talked about a colleague that was concerned, but now after the article was published, now he was in different interviews, he's been stating that it was members of the intelligence community and the Department of Defense who are bending his ear and telling him to go look for this information. Now let's go look at some other information with relation to this. Hold on. We're going to go to, here was a MySpace. Actually, this was something that was sponsored by John Greenwald of the Black Vault. He actually had a little show the other day on Twitter where he interviewed Klippenstein. Let Klippenstein talk about how this all went down. So let's listen to this and see what you think.
Yeah, I just said during the hearing, I had a tweet that said, if you have good or bad stuff about him, like whatever, I didn't want to bias it. And that's why I put out requests for tips, because if you only rely on people that you know, then there's probably a selection bias of who are the types of people that you're going to be friends with. So I just put out a call for tips, and I actually got a lot of people that reached out with kind of tidbits, little piece of information, thought, and it was mostly negative, to be honest with you. And to be totally straight, if there was positive stuff, I would have put that in there too. There just wasn't really. And so I think because of the way the story turned out, everyone's like, oh, he's really looking for a hit piece. Again, being completely straight with you, I don't believe the UFO stuff. I don't have any insight into whether he believes it or not. I assume he believes what he's saying. I'm not someone that thinks everyone is, grifter. And there's this word grifter has become so loosely used. I don't use that. You know what I mean? People tend to. So I don't make any comment about his.
Was
intentions. But yeah,
was that tweet then the root of what sparked you to go to that specific sheriff station?
no, I knew people in the area, and so it was like I was getting bits and pieces from different people about stuff that they were saying, and so they were kind of like, look into his. They gave me, you know how people, the intel people, they're vague. They'll be like, look into his background, and they were kind of hinting that it's like, you know, trying to think about how to say this in a way that's like rigorous. Multiple people told me to just look at any run-ins with law enforcement that they had in the past, and it was vague. I think there's this impression that it's like, oh my god, someone planted this and they gave them the direct. It doesn't. If it works, I mean, I understand why people think that, because a lot of media is planted stories. I don't blame people for thinking that. A lot of, when you open the New York Times, most of those stories the White House put in there, or a committee chair in Congress gave to them on a platter. But that's not. If you look through my past, I'm not particularly well connected with like super high ups. Even in the intel community, most of the people I know, they're like rank and file types. They're kind of like Grusch. They're like GS-15s, you know, GS-12s, that kind of thing.
Okay, so there you have it. So basically, he's saying that he's basically saying that it wasn't the planted story like stuff in the New York Times where there are planted stories all the time, right? This was a planted story. He just admitted to it, and he's saying, "Oh, it's just I don't really do that," but he did do it. And then there was another interview that he had, and this was on Breaking Points, an online show. And I'm just going to play this little segment here. He was questioned about it more on Breaking Points.
Grusch accused you of getting these things leaked by the intelligence community. You revealed it came from the Freedom of Information Act. You did a Twitter space last night. You indicated you were tipped off by this. So were you tipped off by members of the intelligence community?
It was both the Defense Department. I mean, again, it's a mosaic. You talk to as many people as you can because you don't want to be dependent on any one individual who might have a grudge or whatever it is. But yes, I did talk to both DOD people and intelligence people.
In terms of the substance of the tip here, the accusation, I mean, aren't they fundamentally correct that, like, you are publishing dirt that was tipped to you by intelligence community?
Yeah, the answer to that, I'm sure the answer that he gave was not that, but it is dirt. This is what this is. It's dirt. He was deliberately picked because the guy's an idiot, doesn't study UFOs, doesn't care about them, never read a book about it, obviously, doesn't know what he's talking about when it comes to the subject. Basically, he was chosen by people within the Department of Defense and the intelligence community to seek out to file a Freedom of Information Act request in Loudoun County, Virginia, where these incidents happened with Grusch. Of course, there was an incident in 2014 and an incident in 2018, and so this is where Klippenstein was directed by people. And another interesting thing here is that Christopher Sharp, who's the reporter for Liberation Times, he posted some stuff on Twitter yesterday. He says, I spoke to Loudoun County Sheriff's Office, confirmed that the Freedom of Information Act request was received on 30 July. The Freedom of Information Act requested records pertaining to 2 addresses in Loudoun and about a named person. Info on the 2 addresses was provided on 4 August, but no information provided on named person. And then it goes on. He says, also, they confirmed that consistent with both Freedom of Information Act policy, personally identifiable information was redacted from the materials provided to the requesters. So the only way that Klippenstein knew who the person was on these documents was by people within the intelligence community and the Department of Defense who sicked him on to go after these records and publish something about it. This is retaliation. That's what this is. I actually responded to this. I wrote, so that means that it became identifiable because Klippenstein was told by somebody else who it was. And that somebody else was the intelligence community who used him as a useful idiot. That's what happened here. So I don't know what else to say about this other than you know, in a way, Ross Coulthart was right from the get-go on this when he said that it was a hit piece. I mean, it really was providing information that from somebody within the intelligence community that should not have been provided, because this information should have been his name wasn't in there was no identifiable information, according to Christopher Sharp, in the Freedom of Information Act documents that Klippenstein received. The only way he knew what was in there was because of the people who told him that what the stuff was in there. So I wonder, if this ever were to go to court, you have to ask yourself, is it possible if there's a lawsuit filed, for instance, so maybe there is some sort of a HIPAA violation here. I mean, because there's no way that Klippenstein should have known that was that was Grusch in those documents unless somebody had told him about it, which they probably shouldn't have. I don't really know. I'm not sure if there's any kind of lawsuit that can be filed. I'm sure that's something a lawyer can answer, but it does beg the question, right? And I looked up this: can a journalist be forced to reveal confidential sources? Like you have to ask yourself, okay, because he received this data from people within the intelligence community and in the Department of Defense, he was actually told by more than one person. You heard him with his own mouth there. You need to go check this out, right? You need to go look at this, right? And then he was able to, he looked it up, he found the information, he wrote the hit piece. I don't believe, and by the way, he said he would have had more balance, right? Basically, he points this out. He says the article would have been more balanced if Grusch would have talked to him, or if he could have talked to somebody else, right? He could have. There could have been more. The balance could have been achieved by this. There was already some information out there. There were people who provided comments about David Grusch, positive comments, and they could have been inserted into this article. But it's because this guy's lazy and he knew what he was doing. He was writing a hit piece all the way, right? All the way. So because of that, he didn't care. He's lying. I don't believe him one bit. But, it would be interesting if this goes to court, maybe, perhaps, or I guess maybe a House Select Committee could subpoena someone like Klippenstein to find out who told you this information about David Grusch. Obviously it had to be somebody told you, because if the information was not contained in the documents you received from Loudoun County, Virginia, then that means there is possibly HIPAA violations here. So there you go. I had different ideas about what might happen last year, 11 months ago, but here we are, and there is a lawsuit filed, and good for David Grusch. I mean, that's a shame that happened. I mean, it's unbelievable. Actually, it's outright. You could see it. I mean, you could understand exactly what happened there last year. Obviously, that is, as far as I'm concerned, that's retaliation. I mean, the fact that these people in the government sicked this muckraker Klippenstein onto David Grusch in an effort just to make a fool out of him. And, of course, Klippenstein never even bothered to include any sort of other information, some of the positive comments, like I've stated 11 months ago. He never bothered to include any positive comments about Grusch in the article that he had written last year for the Intercept. And so this is what you get. This is what happens now. Now Loudoun County in Virginia is going to have to fight a $2.5 million lawsuit, and they might lose. And who knows what else is going to happen? I still wonder. I still question after all this time. Who are these people that told Klippenstein about this in the government? I mean, that's like a former employer releasing personal information about someone. I mean, that's not the way things are supposed to go. But that's how they did go. So I'm not sure if this is all done yet. I mean, there might be more lawsuits coming. I guess we'll have to wait and see. I would think that there would be. But I'm not a lawyer, so I can't say for sure. I'm just, I'm just speculating. I'm just speculating on this. But you see, this is what happens, folks. When you go up against power, then they strike you. They strike you. They try to make you look like a fool. They'll drag your name through the mud. And so you have to think about how brave David Grusch is for speaking at all. I mean, if he could have just kept quiet and never said anything, and he wouldn't have these issues. But he felt it was something that the people needed to know about, and now he paid a price for it. He paid a price for it, and now perhaps Loudoun County, Virginia, is going to end up paying a price now as well, potentially. We'll see what happens with the lawsuit. We'll have to follow that. And who knows if there'll be more lawsuits filed yet. I wouldn't be surprised if there's another lawsuit going to be filed at some point here. We'll see. Anyway, I want to talk about the most recent Spotify polls. Get caught up on that. For the episode review of the Cosmic Joker / Fingerprints of Peru Mummy Not Human, I asked this question: of the choices below, which constitutes the best proof of an ET NHI presence on Earth? And I had 4 different choices. 5 people, or 14.7%, say the Turkey UFO videos. 9 people, or 26.5%, say the Peru mummies. 10 people, or 29.4%, say the Ariel school incident. And another 10 people say, or 29.4%, say the Vegas aliens. So it's a tie between Ariel School and the Vegas aliens. Well, you can't really go wrong with either of those, folks. Actually, you can't really go wrong with any of these. I have to agree with all of them. Actually, they're all the best. But actually, I still think the Vegas one is the best one. Because we actually have visuals of what the people, the witnesses, had described. But of course, the Ariel school incident, how could you go wrong with that one? You have over 60 kids saying that they saw a landed flying saucer and alien beings, and some of the kids were receiving telepathic communication from a apparent gray alien creature. So how could you go wrong with any of these, actually? The Turkey UFO videos as well. I just did a show about that recently. How could you go wrong with that one? And the Peru mummies, more and more information is coming out on that. The fingerprints now shows that they're not like human fingerprints at all. And in addition to that, the DNA is unlike anything that's known to that's been cataloged. So all of these cases at this point provide great proof as far as I'm concerned. But I do think that the Vegas stuff is the best evidence we have at this point, because we have the visual evidence the visuals to go along with it, along with witnesses who are interacting with these creatures and running away from them and trying to get away from them and being paralyzed by them. So yes, that's why I go with the Vegas alien case. Okay, moving on to the next one. For the episode, some pro-UFO disclosure advocates apparently have other agendas. Well, this was just from yesterday. It's not even 24 hours ago. There's only 23 votes so far, but we'll do it anyway. I asked this question: do you believe it's possible there are dishonest actors within the UFO community who are hell-bent at keeping the ET reality from the public? 23 votes so far. 2 people, or 8.7%, say no, while 21 people, or 91.3%, say yes. And of course, I agree with the majority, because if you listen to my previous show, you know I was very angry. Because, yes, it seems that there are people, most certainly within the UFO community, who pose as big-time UFO disclosure advocates, but when the rubber hits the road, they pretend that there's nothing there and they don't see anything, and they put blinders on and they act stupid, and they don't want anything to do with the actual proof. They want you to. They want everyone to live this in this pretend world that it's still a mystery where we don't know. Where obviously at this point we do know now. It's a known fact now. It should be a known fact for a lot of people. Although there are a lot of people in the UFO community still who aren't interested in getting to the truth. But what are you gonna do? That's just the way things are, and you can't really do anything about it. But like I said before, as time goes on, I am going to talk about some of these people, and I'm going to point out that I think that some of them are disingenuous and dishonest. I think they're dishonest actors. I think they put on a show for whatever agenda they have. I don't know what it is. And I think some of them aren't interested in getting the truth out there. I think that there are other people, like David Grusch, for instance, someone like David Grusch, I actually believe Lou Elizondo, people like that are interested in getting the truth out to the public. While I think other people are in it for fame and fortune and prestige and who knows what, and who knows, maybe some of them are actually government plants, like I suggested yesterday, because it just seems funny to me. I'll tell you what, this is how I feel. When we came out with that, when Scott Roeder presented that his analysis back in early April. I thought, here we go. We finally got something. We finally have something that takes us across the red line. And I waited for the cavalry to arrive, and guess what? That cavalry never showed up. It never came. It never showed up. There were some people who did show up, but there was a lot more who didn't. A lot of the big names, for whatever reason, they just either poo-pooed it or said nothing. And I have to question now a lot of people within the UFO community because, as I've illustrated on this podcast a number of times to this point, that there's most certainly no way that the Kenmore family was lying, and we most certainly have evidence now that shows that there were in fact non-human intelligent beings running around their backyard, just like they said. And the analysis, I believe, from Scott Roeder and his team proved that, and yet we still are living in this ridiculous world where some people from the UFO community itself, they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to acknowledge it. They want to talk about lights in a night sky that might be something and might not be something. That's where they are. They don't want to go any further than that. They want to keep it where it's at. And maybe that's the whole game here. Maybe like some people in the UFO community, we think that they're trying to get to the truth, but really they're just dragging a lot of people around by the nostrils, and dragging a lot of people around by the nostrils, and just leading them on, and for reasons we don't know. It could be a variety of reasons depending on the person we're looking at here. But yeah, I've lost a lot of faith, like I stated yesterday, in some people, some of the bigger names in the UFO community over the past few months. I've definitely, most certainly, lost faith in some of them, and it needs to be stated. And I'm glad I did state it, and I don't really care what anybody else thinks about. Well, I'm for getting the truth out to the world. I don't like, to me, this is an injustice what's going on. It's that there's an injustice that's been going on since almost 80 years now with regard to this situation. An injustice for people who have experienced these things, and yet they're ridiculed and made fun of. I've been reading this one book here recently, by Graham Rendell, the French UFO wave of 1954. And you would not, this is a book I highly recommend. In fact, I'm going to have to talk about this one of these days. You would not believe the number of incidents that was going on in France in late 1950, the last few months of 1954. It was an incredible period, an incredible number of sightings, and not just sightings of UFOs, but landed craft and humanoid encounters. It's incredible, and there was something going on there, and you think all these years later, and we're still, we still don't have the truth from government officials. We still don't have the truth, and we're still living in this land of make-believe, and the people that try to get the truth out there, like David Grusch, you see what happens. And then when you finally do present some kind of, you present evidence, the UFO community finally gets evidence in there, and there's some sort of ridiculous debate. A lot of people out there saying, I just don't see it there. I don't believe Scott Roeder. Okay, that's fine. That's your opinion. But are you a scientist? Are you a crime scene analyst who has over 30 years experience? No. So you're nothing. Your opinion to me means absolutely nothing. It means you know what it means, Jack. You know what. So yeah, and I've had it listening to these kind of people. I'm done with that. It's like somebody telling you, like, I'm looking at this evidence at this point, right? It's like if it's a bright sunny day out and the sun's shining bright and there's no clouds in the sky, and somebody was to tell me, hey, I can't see the sun because there's clouds all over the place. That's what it's like. I feel like people it's like a form of gaslighting within the UFO community over this, and also gaslighting not only from the government and from the debunkers, but gaslighting from some of the bigger names in the UFO community, as well as a lot of these trolls all over the internet. Trolls. And I just don't even, I have nothing, I don't even want to hear from it anymore. I don't want to hear from them. I don't care what they have to say. And I've lost faith in a lot of different people in the UFO community at this point, folks. I really have. Anyway, I want to say thank you all for joining me. Until next time.